Hey guys, welcome back to Distorted Opinions. I'm Kayla, and as always, I'm joined by Matt and Ted. And last week we were talking with former WAAF Assistant Program Director, Music Director, and DJ Mistress Carrie about the station going off the air last year. And we were a little bit worried that the interview was getting kind of long for the video portion of the show, so we decided we were going to split this into two parts. So we'll resume our conversation with Carrie this week and talk to her some more about some of the ventures that she's taken on since AAF went off the air. We get a lot of content to cover this episode, so let's get right back into it.
Obviously, in the realization of not having a job for the first time in your adult life, that you're trying to figure out what the hell are you going to do. And I understand there was a little lag time while you figured yourself out, which obviously made sense. But you had the Cocktails in the War Room segment that you're doing on Facebook and still do. So definitely a good medium and a way to gather the troops, if you will. No pun intended with that. But, all of the fan base that obviously followed for so many years and, still finding a way to gather them together, kind of what made you, I feel like you've already been doing it for a little bit, but what about Cocktails in the War Room as a thing really attracted you to start doing that?
Well, again, you talk about things not happening in a vacuum, right? So AAF goes off the air on the 21st of February. That following Wednesday, I was set to go to a rock radio convention in Vegas. And it was already paid for, company paid for it. And the bosses were like, go. And so before I left to the convention, I had gotten some phone calls already about what's your next step? What are you going to do next? Because at this point, got to, remind everybody, coronavirus was not a thing the way that it's a thing now. And so I had taken a couple of phone calls. I had set up a couple interviews, went to Vegas. I literally went home like that Saturday afternoon after the AAF went off the air. I'm like on the Staples website, like building a fucking business card. Like I've never had a resume, a business card, anything, because I was always at AAF. I never had to do any of this stuff. I never had to go to a job interview. I haven't gone on a job interview since 1997. I don't know what the hell's going on. So I had business cards made and I was like, all right, I'm going to, go to Vegas and I'm going to shake a bunch of hands. The whole rock radio industry is going to be there. Hand out a bunch of business cards, come home. I had some interviews set up and I was like, I'm just going to get myself back on the radio. This is what I do. This is where I'm going. Came home from the convention, had a couple really good interviews. And now coronavirus is starting. This is like the first week of March now, and it's like, what's going on? And I knew that I was going to build MCHQ because I knew that no matter what I did, that I wanted to be able to have a place to work, that I was going to need a studio to be able to put demos together, to be able to go through my archives. Like I just knew I needed a place to work. So I knew that was going to happen. And then it was like, all right, well, if I'm going to spend all this money and build a studio and stuff, for tax reasons, business reasons, it made more sense for me to start a company and to register an LLC and to be able to put the studio as part of a working business. So as I'm doing all of that, one of the things that I had thought about was like doing the podcast and whatever. And one of the guys that worked at AAF that had been laid off a couple months before, I had been talking to him because he was like, he got laid off before it was cool, he said. And so he was kind of giving me advice on like things like filing for unemployment. And so like, I had never done any of this before. I didn't know what the hell was going on. And again, COVID hadn't really become the thing that it became. And he was the one that said, I know you've been putting up old pictures and tweeting and stuff, but, maybe you should go live on Instagram or Facebook or something and just kind of let people know how you're doing. And I was like, yeah, I could probably do that. Like, okay. And the room in my house that is the war room has been called that since I bought the house. Like, it's not that I just started calling it that because of the show. It was always called that. And when my friends, my military friends, whoever would always come to the house, that's the room with the bar.
Perfect.
And so it would be, well, let's go have cocktails in the war room. Like, this is something I've been saying out loud for a decade.
And that's where the name was born.
That's where the name came from, because it's all decked out with all this military stuff. And when you name a room in your house the war room, you'd be amazed at what people give you.
Note to self.
Because there's a room in your house called the war room. So like one of the light switches is a red button. It looks like you would launch missiles. It's a light switch.
That's awesome.
There's a landline in there that's the red phone that doesn't have a keypad on it, that it only receives incoming calls. That really works. So it's like all this funny, like, you know, the red phone in the White House, you know, like I have one of those in my war room. And so there's all this weird stuff in there. So it wasn't weird for me to just put a tweet up and whatever and be like, hey, what are you up to? Figured I would, you know, check in with you guys. So join me for a cocktail in the war room tonight at 8:30. Like, it was I put no thought into it. It was an off the cuff suggestion that somebody had mentioned. And I was like, yeah, I could probably do that. I'll just go live on Facebook, kind of let everybody know how I'm doing. And so I did it. I think the first show was like, I don't know, 17 minutes long or whatever. And I was just sitting in the war room talking into my phone, but like 11,000 people watched, which is like insane.
Yeah.
And because
kind of a big deal.
Yeah. Like I had told people I was going to do it earlier in the day, and people, like, the feedback was like, it's so good to hear you. You know, people were like, you look really good, because I think people expected me to just look like a bridge troll because I was so depressed. So they were like, oh, you actually, like, you're wearing pants and you have lipstick on, like you're pulling yourself together. Good job, you know? And then people were like, this, you know, I've been so excited for this all day. It gave me something to look forward to. And this was on March 14th. So by now, coronavirus is starting to get weird. They were making the decision about the St. Patrick's Day parade. Rumors that Tom Brady was leaving. Like, the world was starting to get really weird. And so I did it the first night. And before I even got done, people were like, come back and do it tomorrow. And I was like, all right, well, I don't have a job. I don't have anything to do. I was like, all right, I'll come back tomorrow and do it. So nothing about the war room was a planned, I call it my happy accident. Like, none of it was planned. It just kind of happened. And people just started watching and going through this with me. And more, it was like a support group for me in a way. It was like therapy. It was like, all these people want to talk about the world and how crazy it is, but also talk about the radio station, and they wanted me to tell stories and, you know, just give them something to look forward to. And so it just turned into this entity that I had never intended, nor could I have ever imagined.
Well, and then just for the audio listeners, Matt is currently wearing a Cocktails in the War Room first edition.
One of the OG
shirts. And Matt, if you turn around just to one more time so we can read the back.
Don't lick anything weird and wash your damn hands.
That's right.
Those shirts will forever be frozen in time of, you know, the coronavirus. And
yep, I got my wife one as well, so she has her own.
And the logo for it, like, so I have a friend that's a graphic designer. Yeah, thank you. She's a graphic designer, and her husband is an artist, and I've been friends with them for years. And I called him and I was like, you know, I want to do these shirts for this charity, and we're going to figure out how to do it. But I feel like the War Room needs a logo. And it was my friend Neil, and he was like, I'm seeing like a martini glass. Because when you think cocktail, like not drink, not anything, when you think cocktail, like the martini glass, I think is the most iconic image. It's like you see it on all the old bar signs, right, you know, cocktails and stuff. It's like the movie, you know, the Tom Cruise movie, Cocktail Dreams, you know. And he was like, but what if, you know, instead of an olive, it had like a hand grenade in it? And I was like, that's it.
As the
it was literally a 5-minute conversation. He was like, let me mock up some stuff. And then they're the ones that came up with the idea for like the sniper's reticle to go around it. So it's like, there's all these little details that you kind of have to look at and you go, oh yeah, like it. I love it. I love that logo so much. I can't take any credit for it because none of it was mine. It had to have purple in it, obviously.
There we go. There's the outline of the grenade.
Yeah, exactly. I just think it's perfect. It's cool. It's simple. I wanted it to be able to look really cool on a t-shirt and a bumper sticker. And I'm working on like cocktails in the War Room barware ideas right now. And I just love the martini glass with the hand grenade in it. I think is just,
It's perfect.
it's so cool.
It suits some your DJ era at AAF to an extent for sure.
Yeah.
Definitely very cool design, 100%.
Yeah, and I can't take any of the credit for it. It's just, there's surround yourself with really smart and talented people. Like whatever it is that you do in life, if you surround yourself with people that are smarter than you and more creative than you, then you can do anything. And so, when I saw the design, I went, oh my God, that's the design. Like I couldn't even have imagined in my head it being more perfect than what it is.
It's funny how that works out. I feel the same way with a lot of that stuff.
Yeah.
Nice. So obviously that's still ongoing, but obviously for the sake of time, we also want to talk about the podcast.
Yeah.
Because I know as soon as I heard you had a podcast, I was super excited because it's like hearing you on the radio all over again.
But I get to say fuck.
Yeah, well, and great, be yourself, not censored, and have very interesting interviews with very interesting people, and obviously lends to your experience and all the relationships you've built over the years at AAF and carrying that forward and getting to talk to so many really cool musicians, which, we're all fans of anyway. So definitely really have been enjoying that. So, I mean, you had mentioned that you were doing an extended podcast on AAF for a little bit.
We called it the side piece, Mistress Carrie side piece, because I couldn't have these long conversations on the air, but I wanted to be able to do these interviews and to have a place for that. And I loved doing it. I stopped doing the side piece, not because I wanted to, but we were moving studios at the time. Again, nothing happens in a vacuum. There's always these extenuating circumstances. And what's funny is that I had meetings where they wanted my podcast to come back as a priority in 2020 at the radio station. That once we got through the move and, kind of got everything situated with the relaunching of WAAF in 2019, that they were like, you need to, once we get settled, you need to make the podcast a priority again. And I was really looking forward to that. And, once I started doing the War Room and once, COVID and coronavirus, whatever, once it really became kind of what we've all been dealing with, I had already been building MCHQ. So having a place that I could actually work. And then it was like, okay, well, what am I going to do? Like for a job, like what am I actually going to do because if radio stations are reeling right now, trying to figure out what their futures look like. So getting right back on the radio again, I wasn't sure if that was ever going to happen. I still don't know if it's ever going to happen that I'm going to end up back on the radio in one way, shape or form. But the podcast was something that I wanted to do. And I had been doing a lot of research on it. And what I loved is that the War Room was already this community that it gave me a place to make these announcements, So it was like when I finally decided, all right, I'm going to do the podcast, I had a group of people I could already tell because I was meeting them in the War Room every week. And so it was like, okay, so there's a million podcasts out there. So what's going to make mine different? And I didn't want it to just be pigeonholed into like band interviews, because just like with WAAF and all of the people that were on the air that night that helped to make WAAF what it was, the music business is more than just the bands. The industry is more than just the people playing the instruments. There's the people that hooked them up. There's the bus drivers. There's the people that actually built the guitars. There's all of these other people that have front row seats to this amazing experience. And Then there's our perspective as the fans, right? So it's how are we interpreting this music that we love and what stories are associated? So I wanted my podcast to be something where the music was the common thread, but it's the soundtrack to the lifestyle. And the lifestyle is what the podcast is really about. So that allows me to talk to the bands, talk to the roadies, talk to the people that make the instruments, talk to, all of the military people that I still wanted to be able to talk to, because the music is the soundtrack for their experiences as well. To be able to talk to actors and comedians and writers, because we always, like we were talking about earlier, music people are music people. It doesn't matter what it is that you do all day. You're a music person, and the music is part of every second of your life. That's what the podcast is. It's a rock lifestyle podcast, because if you love rock music, you're part of that lifestyle. So it's the motorcycles, the fast cars, the tattoos, it's everything rolled up into it. And that opens me up to being able to talk to people that I normally wouldn't have been able to get on my radio show because I didn't have enough time to talk to them. Right, and so it's been really cool. And I can't talk too much about it right now, but I have been working really, really hard now that the podcast is established. Word has started to get out. And so I'm starting to transition from me hounding people to get on the podcast to people calling me asking if they can be on it, which is amazing. And if half of the interviews that I've been trying to make happen actually happen, 2021 is going to be freaking awesome for the podcast.
Well, I will say our podcast 2021 is already awesome because we've already moved up, as we've already mentioned. So
yeah.
But it's really exciting.
This is a great way to start off 2021.
Hell yeah.
Right.
So podcasting in general, 2021 is already better, and it sounds like it will be for you. Hopefully quite soon.
There's a lot of great interviews and really interesting people. And then obviously, as the world starts to recover, the possibilities only become greater with actually being able to take the show on the road and being able to go to where the bands are and to be able to do things in person again. And I'm really excited about what opportunities that's going to open up for me.
Right.
And at the same time, like I said, I don't know what's going to happen when it comes to radio too. And I've had a lot of conversations about ideas on some things, and would I be interested in this, or, what do you think about this idea or that idea? And I'm having a lot of really interesting conversations about what's possible. And I don't think I would be in this position if I wasn't surrounded by the love of the people in the war room, the community, if they weren't there and so passionate. And, it's like every little thing kind of helps. Like if I didn't build the studio, which at the time, it's a lot of money to build a real studio. And when you're laid off and you're worried about paying your mortgage, the idea of spending thousands and thousands of dollars on a studio that you don't know if you're going to have a use for or not, you're just hoping that if you build it, they will come. That was a really hard decision to commit the money. It's like, oh, what am I doing? And I questioned it. And so now it's like
almost like a dedicated risk.
100%, and it's like, I look back now, the way that I look back at the decisions that we made sending AAF off, and that those decisions weren't made in the vacuum, that there was so many extenuating circumstances that were affecting it. We made the right decisions in that moment. And the decision about Cocktails in the War Room, the decision about building MCHQ, about starting my company, those decisions were all being made at a really weird time, not only in my life personally, but in the world. And as of right now, I need to find some wood to knock on. As of right now, I don't have any regrets about the decisions that I made.
And you know, in Carrie, you know, I've got to say that, you know, even outside of being a DJ, you know, it clearly tells that, you know, you don't regret any of the decisions being made. And I have to say that it's amazing to hear all of the success. And, you know, I have a couple notes here too that, you know, besides being a DJ, just a genuine, you know, supportive human being you are, you know, and it's
Don't
phenomenal.
tell anybody, you ruined my reputation.
Well, it's just phenomenal to hear that, you know, and the thing, and I'm probably only just scratching the surface with just a couple of the notes here, but, you know, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you know, you were the first embedded journalist in the Middle East in 2006 and 2011.
First non-news journalist. Yeah.
Non-news journalist. You were awarded the Commander Awards for public service, not once, but twice by the Army. You were Boston Marathon 2009, you know, person for 2019. For 2019, sorry, 2019.
The last marathon.
The last marathon, raising over $17,000 for the home base program. A tough rucker, four-time tough rucker.
The hardest thing I've ever done. The tough rucker sucks. It's awesome.
Yes.
Sucks. It's so hard.
Also recipient 2014 Order of the Saint Maurice. Yes, Saint Maurice. I can't even talk.
Yeah, you get that in service in recognition from the infantry in the Army, and it's 100%. To give it to a female civilian. Because normally it's awarded to actual infantrymen, and now infantry women, obviously, but there weren't women in the infantry in 2014 when they gave me that award. And it was a total shock and surprise. I didn't know when I went to the ball that night that I was getting it. And I wear it with pride. It's a massive medal, like size wise, it's big. So I joke all the time that I feel like Flava Flav when I wear it, because like, it's really, really big. And I only wear it once a year when I go to the infantry ball. Because it's such an honor to receive that, I believe it would be disrespectful for me to not wear it amongst the people that gave it to me. Right. But I only wear it once a year, and I make the Flava Flav jokes every year, and it sits right on my boobs. So I joke that the infantryman like gave me this giant award because where it sits on my chest.
Gives them a reason to stare.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it's down there, you say.
But I'm very proud of being given the awards that I've been given by the military, because I view them in such high regard that for them to reward me for working with them and helping them seems a little counterintuitive, but it's an honor for me. So,
in the years have shown it. And when I was serving during my time, I was attached to the 743rd, and you know, there's been a couple of shout outs that you gave to the guys, and it was amazing to hear. And you know, obviously, I have my squad reaching out and be like, oh, you know, Sergeant V, and I'm like, you know, yep, it's Carrie. She's awesome. She's amazing.
Well, I mean, you know, I have always been, politics aside, because I'm not going to, even try to get into some of these debates, but I have always been, having grown up in a first responder family and a military family, it was always pressed upon me that you needed to contribute to your community and your country in some way, shape, or form. And I'm not medically eligible to serve. So it was just always, I needed to find a way that I could contribute. And I was just always someone that was very vocal in my support of first responders and the military. And sometimes, you know, I take flack for that. You know, when the Iraq war started, you know, there were a lot of protests about it, and supporting the troops is not necessarily the same thing as supporting the war.
Right. Two different items.
Yeah. Supporting first responders, specifically police in this time, does not necessarily mean I'm a racist or that I support racism or that I'm not sensitive to the idea that everything isn't perfect. and that there are problems and things that need to be fixed. And I think, the biggest example of that was the 2 weeks between the insurrection and the inauguration, that it was police that saved our democracy that day. And it was the troops that ensured the peaceful transition of power in DC. It's, where would we have been if those cops weren't there to try and stop? And you know what I mean? So it's like, we owe so much to them, and I'm by no means calling people perfect, but I know enough people in the military and enough police officers and firefighters and first responders to know that it's such a small fraction. The bad ones are just such a small fraction.
Of course.
That we just owe so much to the people that are the ones that run towards the danger when everyone else's instinct is to run away from it. It takes a certain kind of person, and to pay tribute to people that are that selfless, I don't think is ever a bad thing.
I completely agree. And speaking of the military and whatnot, and I know we were talking about this in pre-show, but I have to ask, the F-15 ride, I want to know everything about it. I saw that and I was like,
completely clear. Matt is also a big Top Gun fan, so that is also a part of it.
Aviators, okay. I flew with the Air Force. It's very different.
Yeah, Carrie, I couldn't tell you how many times be like, oh, I love Top Gun because of the Air Force. I'm like, get out of my face.
No, they're the white uniforms when they sang that song to her at the bar. Those are Navy uniforms. So after I came home from Iraq in 2006, I was doing so much with the Army because that's who I was overseas embedded with.
Right.
And the Air Guard, so the National Guard in Massachusetts is made up of Army and Air Force. And
Correct.
So I had been with the Army overseas from the Mass Army National Guard. And so the Air Force, was like, well, how come you're always talking about the Air, the Army Guard? And I was like, well, because they call me, like they want to do stuff. So they were like, well, do you want to do stuff with us? And I was like, yeah, what do you got? And they were like, fighter jets. And I was like, okay.
Oh, what a selling point.
So a few of them showed up at the radio station with this big framed invitation of an F-15 Eagle, which is what is out at Barnes in Westfield in Massachusetts, and invited me live on the air to go for a ride. And I was like, I have an iron stomach, and my mentality and my slogan that I live my life by has always been, if I can die doing it, I want to try it once. And so I was like, 100% I'm in. So at the time, the Miracle on the Hudson had not taken place yet. The Sully Sullenberger bird strike, that had not happened yet. And so they were like, you need to go and spend a day doing emergency procedure training out at the base. We're going to put you in the mock-up. We got to teach you about what it's going to be like and what you need to do and what you can and can't do and all. So I spent a whole day out there. And one of the things that they kept impressing on me in these emergency procedures, and as a skydiver, I've been a skydiver since 1999 or late 98. So I understand the concept of altimeters and all of that kind of stuff. And they just kept talking about these emergency procedures. And they were like, if anything happens to the pilot or whatever, fly east, get over the water, dump the fuel, eject you and the pilot. And so over and over again for hours, I went through these emergency procedures. And I was like, what? When is the DJ going to end up making these decisions? Like,
I get to fly the F-15.
That would make me be in a position to make this call. And when they started explaining to me about the bird strike and that those canopies that Goose gets killed on in Top Gun,
Yep.
If you were to hit a flock of birds from the front, as anybody that's ever had a rock hit their windshield would know, right? It's just going to spiderweb your windshield. But if you get hit by 4 rocks in that exact same place, the 3rd or 4th rock is probably coming through the windshield. The 3rd or 4th bird is probably coming through the cockpit, the canopy. And when you're going 500 miles an hour, a goose is going to take out the pilot.
Yeah, well.
And
There's
so
no doubt about that.
So there was this idea of you're sitting, so the passenger sits in the back. And so I was literally Goose in this moment. I'm in the back seat. And so that was why they were like, it's not going to happen. But there's a fraction of a fraction of a fraction that if it does happen, you're going to be in a $35 million missile filled with jet fuel flying over land, communities, people. You have to be able to do everything you can to avoid what could be a catastrophe. So I took it really seriously. So then I went back the next day to meet my pilot, Wad. That's his call sign. And he went over the flight plan. I mean, these guys do not mess around. They'll make all the jokes you want till it's time to work, as you're very well aware, because you're prior military, that when it's time to get to business, you get to business. And so he was like, go through your emergency procedures, blah, 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 whatever. And so I told him everything, go east, get below 15,000 feet, dump the fuel, eject. And he saying it over and over again. And he was like, I want you to do everything exactly like you just said, except just eject yourself. Don't eject me. And I was like, what do you mean? And he's like, I don't want to be the fighter pilot that gets saved by the DJ. Oh. And I was like, sucks to be you, bro, because I want to be the DJ that saves the fighter pilot. So you're ejected. It's happening. And so I went out there with a film crew from the radio station, and we flew from Westfield slowly. It took 8 minutes, and we were going really slow because he wanted me to get acclimated with the plane and whatever. It took us 8 minutes to fly from Westfield to Provincetown. Yeah.
Wow.
Just
Sounds
think
about
right.
Yeah, just 8,000 miles an hour.
Yeah. And,
slow.
And we weren't even going that fast. Like for that plane, that's slow. And so we flew around Provincetown. We flew around the islands. Mm-hmm. Then we decided to go up over Boston. Listening to Logan Air Traffic Control shut down Logan Airport on a Saturday afternoon because there's a fighter jet in the airspace was unbelievable. We flew over Fenway, and they were putting the decking down over the outfield because there was I think it was Neil Diamond was doing a concert there. This was in 2008 in August. So you have to Google it, but I'm pretty sure it was Neil Diamond. So it was really weird seeing like Fenway, and we were like, I don't know, maybe 5,000 feet up, we weren't that high. And then we followed the pike out because the radio station was right along the Mass Pike at the time. Mm-hmm. And we got over by the radio station, and I was like, oh, Bob Hanna was on the air. And I was like, oh, I wish I had my cell phone because I could call Bob Hanna and be like, look out the window. I'm in the fighter jet.
And you should have looked 45 seconds ago. We're 8 miles down the road.
Yeah. And air traffic control, you could tell, was getting aggravated because we're still in airspace. So he was like, are you ready to go? And I'm like, yeah. So imagine now I'm facing westbound over the Mass Pike, and all of a sudden the plane tips to the right and turns 90 degrees and just takes off like a bat out of hell north.
Oh, kicking off those afterburners.
Unbelievable. We're not breaking the speed of sound because you get in a lot of trouble if you start busting people's windows of their houses in a fight like that. Like the military has to be careful not to piss people off.
The Prudential's got enough money to blow them out.
But just imagine this. So we're in Brighton on the Pike, and I look out the window, like in a split second, I look out the window and I'm like, what airport is that? And the pilot was like, I don't know, the one in New Hampshire. I'm like, Manchester? As I'm saying this, I look up and Mount Washington is right there in front of us. So for anybody that's ever, like, I've made that ride on a motorcycle during Bike Week in Laconia, like, these things are not next to each other. And it happens so fast. So over Mount Washington is protected military airspace. Mm-hmm. And that's where they do a lot of training up there. The fighter jets do. And so they took me up there to be able to really see what this plane can do. And I had gone through, like I said, all this cockpit stuff. So I understand, like a 5-year-old understands a gas pedal and a steering wheel. I understand the fighter jet mechanisms, right?
Yep.
So Wad gets in the headset and he's like, okay, take the controls. And I was like, what do you mean? And he goes, you're the pilot. Try to break my aircraft. Now imagine, I'm like,
$35 million jet. DJ, try breaking it.
Try to break it.
Oh, you kidding? I wouldn't.
So I'm grabbing the controls and I'm pulling it back, pushing it forward. And the plane's going up, down. I'm jacking it to one side, corkscrewing across the sky. Jack it the other way, corkscrewing across the sky. Now I'm wearing one of the things, if you go back and you watch Top Gun or any movie that has fighter pilots in it, there's always a bag that they carry. And they always have those pants on that kind of look like chaps.
Yep.
So that's the G suit. Those pants plug into the plane. And when the pressure changes, it inflates like a blood pressure cuff and forces the blood back up into your torso and into your brain so you don't pass out. And in that bag is the hose for that, and also their helmet and stuff that's got all of the, the radio stuff in it.
Mm-hmm.
So I've got the G suit on. So the pants are inflating and deflating, and they teach you in the training to, like, you basically clinch your butt cheeks as tight as you can get them, and you go, and you're like forcing the blood into your head, because otherwise you're going to pass out. Mm. And so I'm just acting like a jackass. I'm acting like a 5-year-old in a bumper car. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm having a blast. And so then he goes, are you done? And I go, I don't know. Am I? And he goes, do you want to see what this thing can really do? And I was like,
wait, that wasn't it.
because again,
yeah,
who's going to be better at driving a NASCAR? Me, that has, an hour of driving lessons, or,
like Jeff Gordon.
Yeah, seriously. If you're sitting in the passenger seat of a NASCAR and Jeff Gordon's driving, you're going to do way crazier shit than you would if you get in the driver's seat and tried to take it around the track, because you just don't know what you're doing.
Right.
Of course.
So he takes the controls and he starts doing some shit. And I'm like, oh my God. And it's so loud, right? And it vibrates, and it's an assault on all of your senses. And the pants are inflating before you have a chance to clench your butt cheeks and do the thing. So it's all happening so fast. And then all of a sudden I felt my vision go into this black tunnel. And I could still hear everything. Like, when your alarm clock's going off in the morning and you hear it, but you don't really know what the hell that noise is yet. Yep. It's like that. And I have the cockpit audio. And all of a sudden I lost my vision. And I go, okay, you got me, because they had bet me that I was either going to puke or pass out. And I was like, look, I'm not going to puke. I have an iron stomach. You are not going to get me to puke. And so when I told him that he got me to pass out for, 2 or 3 seconds, and I was still conscious, I just couldn't see. And he goes, well, now you can tell everybody that I gave you the big 9, meaning 9 G's. And wow. He goes, yeah. Whoa. And that he said, and now you can tell people what it takes to shut you up. Because it was like 630 miles an hour and 9 G's. And that's what it took to shut me up.
Holy cow.
So this is the part of the story you're going to love. So then it starts telling you bingo fuel, which is you set the thing to know how much fuel you need to get home. Mm-hmm. So the fighter pilots, when they go out on a mission or whatever, they always have enough gas to get home, or at least enough gas to get to someplace safe, So he's like, bingo fuel. All right, we got to go. So we start heading back towards Westfield, and we flew by Orange, Mass, which is where the drop zone is, where I go skydiving. Mm-hmm. And I can see people in canopies, like, a mile out or whatever. And I'm like, oh my God, those are all my friends skydiving. And if they knew that they're going to see the fighter jet go by, anybody that sees a fighter jet in the sky, it's like, oh my God, if they knew I was in it, they would be so pissed, right? This was all worked out ahead of time, which I did not know. So as we're getting closer to Barnes, the base, they told me to go on the radio and request the flyby. Even though Top Gun's naval aviators, they're like, we know you want to do it. So they told me the pattern was full. And then we did the flyby, I mean, come on, who doesn't want this moment, right? So then he's like, we're doing it anyway. And I'm just like, oh my God, this is like a kid's fantasy right now. What they did was they lined up all of the mechanics and the ammunition guys, all the guys that work around the jets that never get to be in the jets. They lined them up on the flight line. And as we were coming into land, he flipped us upside down and blew by. So we did an upside down flyby of the tower and we're blowing people's hats off with the jet. And I was like, this is the greatest moment of my life. Like, this is
Foreign relations.
Then we came back around and we landed and they had numbered the puke bags in my flight suit so that I couldn't hide the fact that I puked if I puked. And they were like, don't fucking puke in the cockpit. Like, get it in the bag. We don't want to clean vomit up in this plane or whatever. So there's pictures of me with the visor holding up the empty puke bag because I was like, fuck you guys. I told you I wasn't going to throw up. And what I came to realize is there's a reason why fighter pilots have that swagger, why they all think they're so fucking cool. It's because they are. They are that cool.
I would.
You just
100% agree.
You put the outfit on, and it was like I was like Iceman. Like I had the same swagger, and like so I tell everybody that I'm a fighter pilot because I have one flight hour that I flew the fucking plane, and then a few weeks later
Hard to argue.
Yeah, I mean, how many flight hours do you have in a fighter jet? None.
Right.
Okay, then I'm a fighter pilot.
Yep.
So a few weeks later, they invited me out to the base, and all of what people might not realize is that the call signs,
Which is
issued.
narco, I believe.
Mine is narco. So the call signs are issued by your fellow pilots, and they are normally representative of something you screwed up during training. Like there's a reason why you get a nickname, right? And so they have a naming ceremony, and there's a lot of booze involved and all of that stuff. And so here I am in this bar with all these fighter pilots, and they put a dry erase board up on the wall. And part of the ceremony is that everybody starts shouting out ideas on what they think your call sign should be. And so they're, purple, this, that DJ, rock. I mean, they just throwing out all kinds of ideas. And then somebody yelled out clam. And I was like, you guys are not calling me clam. And they were like, well, you can drink something off of the wall. You have to do a shot. And if you do a shot, we'll take it off the wall. So I'm like, I want to drink clam off the wall. So they pour me a shot of whiskey. I do the shot of whiskey. They erase clam. One of these motherfuckers in the back of the room goes, I want to drink clam back up on the wall. And I was like, you didn't tell me you could drink it back on the wall. And there's like 50 of them against me. So clam's up on the wall at this point because I can't outdrink 50 fighter pilots.
Yeah.
So then they start doing applause and show of hands to start wiping names back off the wall until they narrow it down to a few. And then they kick the person out of the room, and then they deliberate as to what your call sign will be. And when I was kicked out of the room at this point, full of whiskey, clam was still up there.
Oh,
I was going to ask. I was like, I'm feeling like it's still there.
It's still there. And I'm outside, half in the wrapper going, please don't let me be forever known as Clam.
fucking clam.
Please. And when I came back in, they had settled on narco because I'm narcoleptic and I fall asleep when I'm not supposed to, meaning the big 9 in the plane. But they spelled it with a K like corn because it was more metal than to spell it with a C. So that's the story behind my call sign, is that it's short for narcoleptic because I passed out in the plane.
Well, hey, you know what? I mean, to really solidify and certify you being a fighter pilot, you were given a call sign.
I was given a call sign, and I have wings. I have the patch of the wings, and it says like someone on a military base somewhere got behind an embroidery machine and stitched Mistress Carrie on a set of flight wings.
That's
with
amazing.
Quotes, narco.
And well,
Awesome.
they don't put your name in the call sign like in the same place, I guess. Is like a thing. Like it's either your call sign or your name, but they don't usually do both. So my wings say Mistress Carrie, but my call sign is Narco. And I'm so it's again, like when you're given an award or recognition from the military, it's like a call sign given to you by a room full of fighter pilots. If you had one, it would be in your email signature too.
Absolutely.
So Narco is in my email signature, and it says call sign Narco because I'm a fighter pilot. And my husband, who's active duty military, constantly tries to tell me that I'm not a fighter pilot. But I have one more flight hour than him, so I'm a fighter pilot.
Perfect. One more flight hour than most people.
Right. That's right. But I will tell you, like, if heaven is real, if that moment when you're on your deathbed is real and your whole life plays out in your head before you take your last breath, that will be one of the moments of my life that is in that greatest hits reel running through my head as I'm gasping for breath on my deathbed. Like, it was one of the most amazing experiences of my life. I loved every second of it.
I love it.
It's such a good story. It's a story I haven't heard, and I'm so happy we just had this.
Sorry, it's so long-winded, but it's such an amazing moment of my life. And so hanging in the war room is a picture of the jet in flight over the flight line that the Air Force had a professional photographer out there. And you can't tell it's me because I had the helmet on and my hair was pulled back and whatever, but I know it's me. And they made this big framed matted thing for me to hang on my wall. And so in the war room is a picture, which is evidence of my fighter pilot career, my illustrious fighter pilot career.
Love it.
Oh, wow. I love it. Oh, I absolutely love it. Oh.
It was such a good day, man. I would give almost anything to do it again.
Yeah, especially these days when we haven't done anything forever. Anything sounds like a good time.
You know what was crazy is that I asked him after the fact, because now imagine this, I'm out in Westfield, right? Which for anybody that's listening that doesn't know where that is, it's in Western Massachusetts. It's very rural out there. Then I had to get on the Mass Pike and drive home at 60 miles an hour.
Why is it taking so long?
Which probably felt like forever, like snail.
So dumb. Cars are so stupid. And so when I went back a couple weeks later for the naming ceremony, I was like, how do you guys drive home at the end of the day?
They all have sports cars.
You? Yeah, some of them do, motorcycles and stuff, but it's there's no Ducati fast enough to simulate 630 miles an hour at 9 Gs. It's just, you can't even try, you could be driving a top fuel dragster up at Epping and it's not the same. It's just not.
Right.
But the speed limit is so slow. You're driving home from an air base when you were just in an F-15. So painfully slow.
Yikes.
Oh, man.
Why can't this car bank? Jesus, come on.
This car it's not turning on a dime here.
Sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that was an amazing, I have to say that, in my career, I never would have imagined that I would have ended up where I ended up. And the career has afforded me these amazing experiences and put me in places that I just didn't belong. You know what I mean? I'm standing in the mountains of Afghanistan or standing in the middle of the desert in Iraq or flying in a fighter jet. None of these things are in the playbook when you think about what your life could be like. And I'm so grateful and so fortunate to have had these opportunities. And I really believe in taking full advantage. You don't hear me say no very often because I feel why not?
Right. Life's short.
Well,
it's like that movie Yes Man, just saying yes to everything and all the opportunities that come along with. It's such there's certainly fear for wanting to try something new, but at the same time, you have to be open to it because you'll find yourself in far better places most of the time, or at least if not for the experience, if it didn't turn out okay.
And I'm by no means I'm not somebody that doesn't stress about details. I'm a planner, you know what I mean? But it's like I ride a motorcycle, but I wear a helmet. I'm a skydiver, but I have the best equipment and all the safety precautions are taken. And I've gone through the training and took it really seriously. I'm all about hedging my bet. You know what I mean? I'm not stupid, but I just have a really hard time having a once in a lifetime opportunity presented to me and saying no. That it just doesn't make any sense.
No, not at all.
No.
And it's that, forbid that you do say no, that you can possibly never get that moment back. Not even ever see it again.
The idea of that regret to me is scarier than doing whatever it is that you're afraid to say yes to. Because I'm that person that when I lay my head on the pillow at night, the no's are what keep me awake, not the yeses. You know, and it's like, since AAF has gone off the air, I've tried so hard, and it's a lot scarier to say yes and to try when you're gambling. It's easier to spend the house's money, right? You know what I'm saying? Like than it is to spend to gamble your own. And so it's been scary in this last year without the safety and security of the quote unquote 9 to 5 job at AAF, like the guaranteed job at AAF, because now I'm betting those are my chips on the roulette table. Like that's my money that I'm playing with. And I've been forcing myself to still continue to have that mindset of just figure it out, say yes, spend the money, figure it out later. Like, and it's proven to be the right way to go when it came to building the studio and starting the company and the war room and all of these things. But in that moment, it's so scary to make that decision.
Yeah, it's what we were saying earlier, dedicated risk. That's what it is. Yeah. And, obviously, that risk turned for the positive, and, people are starting to see Mistress Carrie again, starting to get those followers little by little. And, again, I think, and again, not talking for everyone who's a AAF listener, but as a personal fan, that, when having that reconnection with you is like having that sensibility of home from AAF. So it's like, okay,
and it's the same for me in the reverse. Being able to connect back with the people that are attached to that place that I loved so much, and that community of music lovers that I consider myself to be a part of. I missed you guys as much as you missed me. And it's not a one-way thing. It's
and I think that's a great reason why I think there's continued success, because that symbiotic relationship between the AAF and you as a DJ, and now you as a podcaster and starting your own business, and the vacuum of what AAF has left behind. We're all still wanting to go home, if you will, using the current terms that we've already been using, but still being able to connect and have that as a staple of our day to day is certainly been awesome, and something we've talked about numerous times, but still appreciate.
I'm still buying lottery tickets every week because
aren't we all though?
I can start my own radio station, but it hasn't happened yet. But I'm doing the next best thing because I haven't won Powerball yet. So, the podcast is giving me, it's given me that opportunity to reconnect with people. And, what's been amazing is that when I call the bands, when I call the people in the industry, that nobody says no. That like, it would be very easy for people to be like, well, you're not on AAF anymore and the bands are busy. No one says no. They all are like, yep, let's make it happen. What do you need? How can we help you? Which has been amazing, that all of those people are there. And once the podcast really got its legs under it, and the interviews got scheduled, then all of a sudden, the download numbers are going up, and you're seeing that the audience is finding you again, because I still, a year later, bump into people at the gas station and they're like, I miss you on AAF. And I'm like, well, you got to check out you have a podcast? Like, people are still, you would think with Twitter and Instagram and Facebook and the War Room and all of these things that everybody would know, but everybody's lives are so crazy this year that it's like, I'm still bumping into people and the podcast is still growing. And, I gotta say, with, at the risk of sounding like, the corporate kiss ass, nothing's possible without, the help of sponsors too. You know what I mean? And so I really knew that this was really becoming a legitimate, that this wasn't just a hobby for me, that when the advertisers started calling, you know, when like Digital Federal Credit Union called and said, we want to sponsor your podcast, they were the same people that when I called them and said, I have this crazy idea of getting embedded with troops in Iraq in 2006, they didn't say no. They said, what do you need? And now for all these years later, for them to come knowing that I'm starting this new thing and charting this new course, and for them to go, no, we want to sponsor the podcast. We love what you're doing. Let us be a part of it. You know, none of these things can happen without the other.
I was super excited for you when I saw on that particular episode when it was marked sponsored by DCU. I was like, oh yeah, Carrie is really taking off with this. You know, it's not, you know, from following, you know, second episode in when I just got over to the podcast, and obviously you're just shaking the bugs out, and it's just, you know, music interviews, which were great. But then seeing the transition, and, you know, now you obviously have the sponsor, you have the Pantheon network of podcasts, which that was the last episode I just finished a couple days ago. You know, that the networking that you're in, the promotion, I suppose, that comes along with the growth of the podcast is, you know, really fun to watch as it has been progressing over the past couple of months as a listener.
And I love the fact that everybody in the war room and everybody is part of it. You know what I mean? Like the people that have been in the war room with me since March 14th, the family, as they call themselves, you know, that they're like, when did you ever hear an audience excited that you got a sponsor?
You barely hear it.
Well, because,
you know, like nobody
you know what
listens to the radio and goes, yes, commercials. Like nobody does that. But people are so invested and they're so behind me and they're rooting for me so much. And if they weren't there, the sponsors wouldn't want to be there either. Like everybody has just like galvanized around me in this way that they're like, no, we got your back. And it's been so amazing and overwhelming and special. And there aren't enough words to describe how it feels to have a group of people that want to listen and are so supportive that they're willing to cheer on sponsors.
Right.
I know, how nerdy was I? That's on me.
Mean. No, but you're not the only one. Like, but the people know what the sponsorship means. They mean, you know, they know that it means legitimacy. They know that it means financial security. They know that it means that it's a real living and breathing thing. It means progress. It means commitment. And it means that I'm not going anywhere.
That is also where my brain went.
And I think that's where the excitement comes from a listener's point of view, is that, yep. Okay. Gary's going to be staying here for a while.
Yeah. And then it's only growing. You know, I expanded the podcast in October to include the sit rep, which Monday through Friday, if you subscribe to the podcast, you get like music news, entertainment headlines, all of it, but it's less than 5 minutes and you get, it's like a greatest hits, the rundown, like the old MTV news briefs that like Tabitha Ford and Kurt Loder used to do, where they just run down all the things that are going on that day super fast because people are busy and a lot of people aren't commuting and they don't have a lot of time. But you can feel totally connected. You know that I'm going to do all the research for you and go, this is what's going on today. Boom, 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 boom. Get your latte done. See you tomorrow. And the response on the sit rep has been amazing as well, because I think people want to be informed. They just don't have a lot of time. So they let me do the hard stuff for them, you know?
Mm-hmm. No, that's certainly a great addition, to be fair. And I love how it's the small stuff. And then you have the big episode of the week with the larger
numbered
interview
episode. The full length episode. And
really great.
Right.
And, you know, I'm hoping that as things move forward, you know, the beauty of the podcast and the beauty of the fact that I own the company is that I can make these decisions based on what I think is a good idea. I mean, before it was like, okay, Carrie, come on, we're going to have a meeting. We're going to bring in the marketing team. We're going to bring in the programming department. We're going to bring in the lawyers. We're going to bring in these people. We're all going to sit around a table and we're going to hash out an idea. And I loved that collaborative process. But it's kind of nice to just wake up and go, I feel like doing this, so I'm doing that.
You run your own show.
Yeah, but the problem is if you make a mistake or you do something stupid, you got to be willing to own it.
Own it.
However, if you make a really good, smart decision and good things happen, you get to take all the credit.
Yep. It's all or nothing. That's
it's all or nothing. And it's it's flying by the seat of your pants, and it's really scary to be the one that has to own everything. And I know that I've made mistakes, and I know I'm going to make mistakes. And, there have been engineering issues and there have been, IT problems. And, I've made all kinds of mistakes that I never would have made if I was at the radio station, because I could have just called the engineer and been like, can you come and fix this? And now I have to figure it out myself, It's
all trial and error. It went up, but how do you learn from something? From trial and error.
Yeah, that's the only way to learn is to kind of make the mistakes. And thankfully, I haven't really made too many horrible mistakes. And the slight ones, I've been forgiven for. I think the audience is on this ride with me, and they know, like, she's figuring this out too. I mean, they,
100%.
everybody, that T-shirt you're wearing, I packed that T-shirt in my dining room with my family. Like, I'm touching every single thing that goes through my company. And see? So it's like, I'm getting a certain amount of leeway when it comes to mistakes, because people understand that I'm doing a lot of things I never did before.
Right. And from an audience standpoint of view, I know, watching your podcast, and that, hey, you know what? This is Carrie's moment. This is Carrie's baby. And, we're going to follow her from day one until, the end of time. And there's never that moment. I know from my personal point of view is that there's never that moment where it's like, oh crap, she just fucked up type of thing. It's just like, hey, just like what you said, hey, we're going to roll with it. And
it's like
the fact that, we're getting to see you, we're getting to talk with you, communicate with you, first off, on a hell of a lot easier note, because, obviously not so much COVID times, but also through social media where you're interactive. I mean, we're in a time now, I think, where social media can allow us to interact on an easier note.
Get to people. Yeah. I mean, can you imagine when I was 16, if I had access to John Bon Jovi?
You'd be competing with a lot of people, I'd imagine.
Like if John Bon Jovi were doing Instagram lives, you know what I mean? Like, it was so awesome. But it is really cool. Like, I love the instant feedback, and I love people's reactions. I love that the podcast goes live at midnight, and when I wake up Wednesday morning, people that work third shift have already listened to the episode, and I'm already getting feedback about, oh, I love that part. I love it when he said this, or, and that's why I love it the next week in the war room when we recap the podcast from the week before. And I'm like, did you guys learn something from the person that you didn't know before, or whatever? And I always get a different perspective from the audience too, which I love, and having the backstage pass holders, the people on Patreon that are part of this other smaller focus group of people that I bounce ideas off of, and, I communicate with every day, and I'll say, hey guys, what do you think about this? And somebody's like, I think that's really cool. Nah, I don't know if I would do that or not. And like, having those people there too, it's like, the feedback's been great. And, as long as nobody gets upset when they tell me not to do something, I do it anyway. It's like, at the end of the day, it's my
They get over it.
Yeah, they have to get over it.
Yeah. But it's been really cool. And, it's all been happening in a time where the world is so crazy that I can't even imagine doing the podcast like live backstage at a venue. Like, I just can't imagine, because we haven't lived in that world in almost a year, where it's like the possibilities when people can leave the house are almost too many for me to even comprehend.
Right. And what would taking the rails off of what you've been building and putting together in the confines of where we've been living for so long, what are those possibilities, and what would that look like? I mean, we talk about doing this podcast. We've only done this podcast over Zoom. 100%.
What are you going to do when we can actually be in the same room together?
So, funny story.
We look forward to that.
we have a jam session at where I live once a month, and obviously it's been on hold due to COVID. And I have an original Pizza Hut lamp that came with this house, and it hangs in the basement right next to my drum set. And we have a pub table parked right underneath the lamp. So we're going to have a podcast episode at some point, all of us under the Pizza Hut lamp, probably with this Yeti mic, and just actually doing this in person, which would be so weird.
It's going to be totally weird.
Because we're always facing each other. And now we're going to have to it's going to be filmed. So we're going to.
You guys are going to have to learn how that when you turn your head like this, the microphone doesn't work the same as it does when it's like this.
Right. It's so weird.
Right.
We're going to reinvent the wheel for us on doing this in person at some point. But
it's a totally different thing to interview a bunch of people in the same room as it is when you're doing it like this. It's like there are pros and cons to both.
Right. Well, and we've talked about one of the big plus sides for us doing it this way is it's really opened up the possibilities to who we can potentially have on the show, because a few weeks ago, we had Ray and Joda, who are two guys that we've been kind of following. Ray does live drum streams on Twitch, and the two of them have a podcast that they do live on Twitch, and they live out in Seattle. And there's no way that we would have been able to ever, first of all, had it not been for all this and all the time that we're all spending on Twitch and Netflix and all the various platforms where we're consuming technology, I'm not sure that we would have ever stumbled across these guys and gotten to know them, but also it probably would have been next to impossible for us to have ever had them on our show because there's no way it would have worked out. And so in that regard, it's opened up the possibilities for us being able to bring on people that we otherwise wouldn't be able to. But at the same time, we've talked about really looking forward to being able to go do some of these things in person. Our first guest ever on the show was a friend of ours from high school who plays saxophone, and he plays with about 6 different bands. And we've talked about hey, when it's safe for us to go to shows, it'd be awesome if we could come to one of your gigs and do a show at one of your gigs. And so, yeah, it's definitely doing it in person is going to be a very different thing. And that's a whole other
in the middle. To be able to hold on to those interviews that are people in Seattle that you can't just go to Seattle and talk to them, but then taking advantage of the opportunity to be able to do things in person. It's like there's a really good mix of the two, and you just find whatever that mix is that works for you and do it. But it's necessity is the mother of invention. That's a phrase for a reason. A lot of people had COVID make things difficult for them. And you just figure out, thank God we have all this technology.
And it was here before. It wasn't, it just was finally utilized.
Just using it.
Right. Zoom's been around for a while. I've used Zoom for some webinars and stuff that I've attended in the past, but I really didn't know anything about it. And that was one of the really weird things for me from a work perspective, because what I do is production, and all of our production stuff came to a halt. We couldn't do anything in person, and it took us a few weeks to figure out how are we going to do this? And we weren't the only ones in that situation, so we kind of talked with other people, learned what other people were doing, and figured it out after a while. And now it's just kind of now this is how we do it. But it was a weird transition at the beginning there, going from well, shoot, we can't have anybody come into the studio right now to film a show. That's just not possible. In fact, one of the things, so Ted had mentioned that we had a jam session before COVID. Our jam session was actually the last one that we did was 2 days before the quarantine went into place. That's the last time.
We had it Saturday, and then quarantine started Monday.
So brutal, man.
I know.
Yeah. So it's been a really weird time. And I personally look forward to seeing people in person again. I look forward to being able to play music with people again, because that's kind of the one area that I don't think has really been worked out as far as technology. There are ways that people are playing music together right now, but not live. You can't, the three of us can't get on to Zoom, pull out our instruments and play a jam
much
together.
A lag and a delay, and actually,
Right.
the guys from Metallica, you know, they're writing music right now, and they talk about that being the hindrance is that they can't all play simultaneously and just jam, and it's like,
right.
you know, there's so much of music that is that happy accident, that accidental riff, that wait, what did you just do? Do that again. And how many amazing songs have come out of somebody accidentally playing the wrong note and everybody else in the room going, no, do that again. That was cool. And, you know, it's so hard to do those things right now. But I can't wait until I can't wait, even though Cocktails in the War Room's named after the room where we do the show. My dream of taking Cocktails in the War Room on deployment and being able
those are going to be looking days to look forward to.
Yeah, to be able to go backstage at a show and at 8:30 go live for Cocktails in the War Room on deployment, and to be able to take the show wherever I feel like taking it. Like,
and that's the best part, wherever you want to take it. Yeah,
well, that's the thing. Is like, you know, right now it's like, where the hell am I going? But like. You know, to be able to travel and just bring the computer and some microphones with me and go, all right, well, I'm here. And so Tuesday, you know, tonight, the War Room, this is the War Room I'm in tonight, you know, or to be able to go into other people's war rooms, you know, and do the show from other, like, I don't know what's going to be possible because I've never been able to do it yet.
Right. And I think it's probably fair to say, though, that's exciting to hear, though. Because it's the possibilities are endless.
Yeah.
And, you know, with your podcast growing, getting those followers, you know, seeing followers increase that, you know, when, you know, it's, as they say, you know, it's, you know, the green light to, you know, pretty much kind of get back to normalcy. You know, those followers are going to go with you wherever you go.
I hope. I should be so lucky.
Well, you got 3 right here.
You got 3 guaranteed right now.
Check. I'll take it. I mean, it's really exciting. And like I said, you know, I don't know if I'm going to end up back on the radio again. I've had a lot of conversations with brainstorming some ideas on some things that might be possible. The world's, I think everyone is in the same boat where everyone in every industry is trying to figure out how things are going to get back to normal and how different normal is going to be. Like, you know, there's nothing saying that what sucked about your life before, you don't have to bring that back.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
make readjustments when things get back to normal. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, you know, there's certain things about the podcast, the War Room. I mean, I can't wait to be able to start doing in-person interviews here at MCHQ. I built the studio with more than one microphone for a reason, because I want people to be able to come in here and hang out with me. There's a couch over there for a reason, because I want people to be able to come in and lounge around and
have a cocktail.
Yeah, there's so many places to have cocktails. It's not just the War Room. Cocktails at MTHQ, cocktails in the bathroom, I mean,
just don't
cocktails
steal the toilet.
With a stolen toilet.
Yeah.
I'm
How do you steal a fucking toilet?
We're just gonna. It has to be an inside job. That's the only thing I can think of.
That's planned.
Oh, no,
that's planned.
You know, it's mind-boggling to see that. I mean, yeah, that's just.
They stole a toilet.
They stole a fucking toilet
with tools.
But did they have tools?
It wasn't broken.
I don't know.
I have no idea.
It's one of the mysteries of the universe. How did the AAF listeners steal the fucking toilet? I don't know. Maybe that's the name of my
If
book.
you're listening and you did it,
where's the toilet?
Write to us, and we'll be the medium in between.
Yeah, it was an indoor beach party at the Marlboro Convention Center or whatever it was. It had to have been 92, 93. If you have the toilet, I need to know how you did it.
Yes, send a picture. Picture it didn't happen.
Matt, what's our email address?
distortedopinionshow@gmail.com.
There we go.
There you go.
That's amazing.
I don't know. It's
go ahead, Kayla.
No, I was just gonna say, I know there's one thing we haven't talked about yet, and that is that Carrie, you launched a website recently. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about that, what people can find on there.
So it took me a long time to come up with the name of the website. I used my imagination. And I came up with mistresscarrie.com.
Perfect.
Awesome.
Yeah.
On brand.
Yeah. I mean, it's so funny because like I thought about naming the podcast something else and everybody was like, why? Just name it the Mistress Carrie podcast. Like, don't be an idiot. And so I do that a lot. People have to tell me not to be an idiot a lot. And so I've owned the domains for years, the Mistress Carrie domain, you know, and so it's like, okay, I got to build the website. Like, what do I want it to have on there? And so it's like, it has to be everything, right? It has to be the one-stop shop for everything. So if you go to mistresscarrie.com, the first thing you're going to see is every episode of the podcast. So all of the weekly long form numbered interview episodes that come out every Wednesday, all of the sit reps are on there. So that's Monday through Friday. Those started back last October. The after action reports, which are the interviews that I do with people that come in the war room. So if you weren't watching the war room and I talked to Mike Mushak from Stained or Mark LaBelle from Dirty Honey or, you know, Rob Dietrich, the distiller from Metallica's Whiskey Blackened, I take the audio from those interviews and I put them up on the podcast in case you missed it. And so those are called after action reports. So those are all there. It took forever, but I was able to download all of the original episodes of Cocktails in the War Room. So every episode of the War Room is up on the website now. So those are all up there. Then there's a blog. So I, you know, every once in a while I'll go up and put a blog up. And I've been having a lot of fun making playlists for things like Halloween playlists, Christmas playlists, organizing charity events, just like, you know, if I want to get the word out about something, I can just put it all up in the blog and then tweet the link out to the blog and be like, hey, check this out, whatever. So the blog is there. My photo galleries are there, although there are not 1% of the pictures that I have are up on the website right now. Like I need to get the podcast episodes up. I need to get the War Room episodes up. So I'm like slowly chipping away at all of the stuff that's going to be on the website, but there will be a photo archive with thousands of pictures of everything that I've done, my trips overseas, all the bands that I've met, the charity events. There'll be plenty of pictures of my dog because she's such a ham. If you watch the War Room, you know. There's also an events calendar up there, which is not only going to be a place where you can go to find me when I can actually start going out and going places and hosting events and whatever. But it's also going to be a way to find out about charity events. And it's also going to be a way to obviously keep all of the concert information in one place. So when concerts start actually going on sale, that this concert calendar, it's all going to be up there so that you can get the details on when the tickets go on sale and all the venue information, all of that. It's all going to be up on the calendar so that you just have to know to go there and everything will be spelled out in front of you. And then there's the store that has all my gear in it, which I have been having a blast putting together. So there's the online store with the t-shirts and the hoodies and the beanies and the coffee mugs and the pint glasses and the Christmas ornaments and stickers and mouse pads. And I was like, all right, what do people like? What are people going to want? And I was like, how many people have a new home office that they didn't have before?
Absolutely.
So I made pen packs and mouse pads and coffee mugs and things that you can outfit, magnets and stuff that you can outfit your home office. And then obviously, if you're having a cocktail with me every Tuesday in the War Room, you got to have a shot glass and a pint glass. And so I started out that way. And the goal is to have new products come all the time. I spend a lot of time sourcing products that are either made locally or made in the US or made by veteran-owned companies. I can't guarantee that everything in my store will meet that criteria, but
I can tell you that this t-shirt is made in America.
It is. That t-shirt's made in America. It was designed in Massachusetts, printed in New Hampshire, and the t-shirt's made in the United States. And I love being able to source those products as much as I can. Sometimes it's really hard. Sometimes there are just things that it's just not possible, but I try to use localized businesses as much as I can. I try to support American manufacturing as much as I can. And I try to support veteran organizations like the beanies that are on the website, the embroidered beanies. Those are made by a retired Marine who started an embroidery company. So I try really hard to support those people too. And I figured, if I'm going to build a business from the ground up, that I have the ability to make these commitments early on. And, it's not 100%, but it's a mentality with my business to do as much of it as I can, as local as I can, because, like when we did the War Room fundraiser at the beginning, the shirt that you're wearing, I wanted to make sure that it was going through the post office, because there are so many people employed by the post office that, it's like, I'm very aware of where the money, I think everyone today in the world, or especially in the United States, is very well aware of the power that they have with where they spend their money.
Especially with the restaurants being closed and closing, who you're ordering from.
Yes.
Certainly a mentality that I feel like a lot of people are in of, I need to order out because I want this restaurant to survive.
Right.
Yet the sports bar down the street is already closed. Yes. So, it's hard. But
and you're aware that if you buy something from a giant company like Amazon or Walmart versus making a purchase from a locally owned business in your town, people are very well aware of the influence that purchase has. And I don't want people to question if they buy something from me. Like, I want them to know that every effort was made to make sure that I'm taking care of as many people as I can through the chain of the purchase. You know what I mean? I'm not saying I never buy anything from Amazon or Walmart, or you know what I mean? But it's like I'm making a concerted effort to try and help as many people and bolster as many. Like when we did that War Room fundraiser with the shirt that you're wearing, Brian at Whirlwind Productions, when I placed that t-shirt order, his business was down 95%. And he told me he was wondering how he was going to pay the mortgage on his business. And those t-shirts, even though all the profits after everybody got paid got donated to charity, part of the reason why we did it wasn't just to donate the money to the Massachusetts Military Support Foundation. It was to support the businesses along the way.
Behind it. Right.
And he is so grateful because that t-shirt order came at a time where he needed the business. And I know that it helped him. And so he's been printing my t-shirts since, I believe, the Dimebag Daryl t-shirts you guys have is printed by Brian. He printed the Iraq and Afghanistan t-shirts that I gave out to the troops when I was embedded overseas. The Tough Ruck team t-shirts, the team AAF t-shirts, those were all his company. He's been printing my t-shirts for decades. So it was very important to me when I found out that his business was hurting, that we do something to help him.
For him. Well, that makes this, wearing this, this t-shirt, even more special now.
It just, I want you to be able to wear it with pride and to know what's behind it.
Oh, of course.
Every
100%.
detail behind it was purposeful.
That's awesome. I don't know. I mean, we already look at it with a lot of, we're happy to have it, but even knowing the history now, even more so behind the behind the curtain, if you will, of all of that, it's certainly pretty awesome.
With Teeny Creative, the people that actually did the graphics.
Mm-hmm.
It's like they have a lot of big corporate clients and customers. And, I'm building a company from nothing. I needed everything. I needed business cards. I needed logos. I needed t-shirts. I needed everything. And they have been there all along the way. And so it's like, okay, well, we're in the middle of a pandemic. I'm going to use you to design this artwork for this t-shirt so that it gives you money back too.
Right. Resources.
Yeah. So it's like
networking resources. Yeah.
I'm trying. They always say, don't go into business with, don't do business with your friends, and I'm trying really hard to not have that be the case, because I love that we're building this community of businesses that, want to be involved. And I'm seeing it now with companies that come to me and go, hey, can we get involved with the War Room? Hey, we want to, I love that companies are coming to me going, hey, I want to make you a coupon code so you can do a Mistress Carrie deal in the War Room and give people, 15% off just because they're hanging out in the War Room with you. And so it's like, I'm trying to, if I'm going to subject you guys to sponsorship messages, I want you to get something out of it. And it helps.
You can subject us. We're just happy you have them.
Yeah, but,
we weren't talking. I'm kidding. I know what you mean.
Like when Spartan Brews Coffee came to me and they were like, hey, we want to get involved with what you're doing. It's a veteran-owned coffee company. And they were like, we're going to give you a coupon code because we want anybody that's a fan of yours to get discounted stuff off of our website. It's like, awesome. So you guys are getting discounted coffee. Everybody's getting taken care of. And we're building this community of companies and
support, and keeping them alive, especially during times just like what you said. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's been amazing. There's always room for more, obviously. So if you have a company and you would like to do some work with Mistress Carrie or Bigfoot First Productions, please go to mistresscarrie.com. But yeah, it's been really cool. And it was always, when I was at AAF, it was always the advertisers that wanted to do more than just put their commercials on. That the advertising always did better. The ones that wanted to get involved with what we were doing, that wanted to be a part of the community that we built with the listeners. And I want to have that same, responsibility and relationship with the companies that get involved now, and all I can hope is that, it's a beneficial relationship for all involved, the people that are watching, the companies that are sponsoring it, everybody. I want everybody to. I became such an optimist at a time of a global pandemic and getting fired. I don't know how that happened. I tried really hard to look at the positive side of everything, which
I think it's the only sanity, the point of sanity that we have at this point. So keep us from falling over the other side.
That probably goes to say, because if you think of it, right now this pandemic has made us all so restricted that, when normalcy was, we were, call it maybe a little robotic, but now that we're kind of confined to, not only our safety, but the outside safety, that it kind of makes you think outside the box. And then when you're not so busy focusing on everything that's around the world like before, it kind of makes you reevaluate everything that you're doing now and going, okay, well, what can we do now? And then that's when
you're taking inventory of your life now, you're realizing what's important and what's not. And you want to keep the things that are worth your time and effort and what's important to you, and, cut through the noise and figure out, okay, like I want to give back to the people that have been there since the beginning for me. You know what I mean? I want those people to feel like the special people that they poured the foundation. It doesn't matter how high the building gets. If the foundation's cracked, you're fucked. Mm-hmm. The people that are my foundation mean everything to me. And while there's always room, we'll build the building as high as we can get it. The people that were there from the beginning, they know how much I appreciate them. They know how special they are to me. And, the companies that have gotten involved and the favors that I've called in and the bands that have picked up the phone. The fact that Sully from Godsmack custom wrote a theme song for me for the podcast.
What's that say? Yeah.
And gave it to me as a gift. Like, how do you say thank you for that? You know what I mean? But when you look back at the amount of times that he and I have asked for favors of each other in all the years we've known each other, it's like, well, it's just an extension of what's already been there. But I'm eternally grateful. If you watch Cocktails in the War Room, if you listen to the podcast, that's my song.
Yeah.
Right. Yep.
And I love how you got all the snippets from your days on AAF with all the different celebrities, musicians saying your name in different capacities. And I was like, that's cool that you can steal that for yourself. Obviously, because
the guy that told me to go live in the War Room the first night is the guy that put that together. I didn't put that intro together. He put that together for me. And
wow.
And we combed through archives and audio and and it wouldn't sound as cool if Sully's song wasn't as cool. The fact that it's called War Drums is just even better. You know what I mean? It's like, I've just been so lucky over the last year that so many people have offered to help and have wanted to be part of what I'm building. And I am so grateful that what could have been and what was like the worst day, you know, the worst experience. I mean, it literally felt like someone just, that scene in Indiana Jones where the guy puts his hand in the other guy's chest and pulls his heart out while it's still beating. Like that's what that day a year ago felt like to me. And somehow over the last year, people like you guys, you guys have found a way to like cram the beating heart back into my chest. The scar is always going to be there from having it removed in the first place, but like to be able to find a way forward, it's just not anything on that day, you know, that.
Yeah, it's got to be indescribable.
Yeah. When you listen back to the tape of a year ago and you listen to the end of that song and you hear the station go silent, know that I was sitting on the other end of it, hysterically crying with my face in my hands, trying to figure out how I would ever recover from this death. And it sounds over dramatic, but when you understand that I spent almost 30 years of my life there, it meant everything to me. I was there on my worst days. I was there on my best days. There are things that happened in that studio when the microphone was off, like to me personally, that people just don't even know was happening. You know what I mean? Like I went through some of the darkest times of my life trying to figure out how I could possibly turn that mic back on and try to work because my life was falling apart. Deaths, divorce, all of it. And to then have that place just not be there, it just felt like, you know, a knight without their shining armor. I had no shell. I had nothing. And then you wonder, who are you?
When you start reevaluating like who you are.
Well, like for somebody that was in the military, your military career becomes your identity, right? The uniform becomes part of who you are and what represents you. And there's a reason why people, when they get out of the military, have a hard time readjusting their lives because your job became your identity. And I'm not saying that being a DJ on WAAF is as noble as being in the military. It's an analogy to, I did that job for so long that my name was Mistress Carrie from WAAF. Like from WAAF was the last name.
Right.
And when it's not there anymore, you go, well, who the fuck am I? What do I do now? Like, I remember somebody saying, like, you're going to have to get a real job. You're not going to be able to have purple hair anymore. I'm like, I've had purple hair since my 18th birthday.
Right.
My
Yeah, that's
mother
me.
wouldn't recognize me. But it's like you start thinking about things like that and you're like, who am I?
Right.
So the fact that I've been able to like put my identity or to maintain my identity or to be able to like build my life back up, like it sounds melodramatic, but I'm not meaning it to sound that way. You know, these are real things that I've been, you know, working through. And again, not in a vacuum. You know, I've had personal things go wrong. You know, I got married and then my husband deployed and has been gone for months now. There's a freaking pandemic. I mean, it's just, you know, it's like, just keep throwing it, put another log on the fire and see how hot we can get it, you know? And through it all, the people have been there for me. And I know that they know I appreciate it, but I don't quite know if they understand the depths of, you know,
and they probably will never know. But I think it's probably safe to say though that, you know, it seems that your podcast and these goals that you have in place are it's deteriorating that idea of ever having that question of who you are. You know, you got all these things that are building up that's keeping that Mistress Carrie name and but it's not so much just a name, it's a personality. You know, when I think of, I'll tell you, like when I think of purple hair, Mistress Carrie comes up. I
I'm
can't.
an OG, man.
He did it before it was
100%. Can't think of
Cool
anything.
and not cool and cool and not cool like 6 times since I dyed my hair. Like it's been in fashion and out of fashion. I remember when I dyed it on my 18th birthday. My mom was like, "What are you going to be 40 and have purple hair?"
Hell yeah!
After that, on my 40th birthday, I was like, and now I look forward to being like that crazy 80-year-old lady with purple hair that like little kids make fun of, and it's like, bring it on, bitches.
Exactly.
Well,
Just that's when you go to them and go, like, yeah, I was doing air when you don't even know my
I used
story.
to walk uphill both ways to school in the snow with no boots on, and I killed a grizzly bear with my loose leaf notebook. You don't know. Get off the lawn, kids.
And then for some reason, you randomly pull out the Heart of the Ocean from Titanic and say,
Right?
It's been 84 years.
That's what I want to be like Betty White with purple hair.
perfect.
I can see it happen.
It'd be so awesome.
Well, for the sake of time, I think we need to look to wrap this thing
you're
up.
going to say the sake of time?
What, 3 hours? I don't know. We're having fun, but oh man.
Sorry, I talked you.
No, it's all good. I think to kind of recap that last bit, I think as much as it's interviews like this where people can listen and, you know, for being fans for a long time or maybe discovering you for the first time, who knows?
Who knows?
You know, there's definitely a lot of history and a lot of great content that you're generating. So definitely hope to have everyone, if you're not aware already, definitely need to go to all the places. We're going to be putting all of the places you can find Mrs. Carrie. All the things Carrie will be posted as part of this particular podcast. So
just Google Mistress Carrie and
just
you
go
will
to
be happy.
mistresscarrie.com. It's all right there. Everything.
It's all right there.
All the episodes, the social media links, the store. It's all there.
Yep. So in typical distorted opinions fashion, we always end with a song of the week. So I think if we're ready to kick that off, I suppose I should go first because I'm afraid Mistress Carrie might pick my song. So I want to get it out in the open.
We all came up with the same one.
Well, these guys already put it down in our Google spreadsheet, so I know what they're picking. I was just most concerned that you might pick it.
Listen, if Carrie picks your song out of 30 years of music, then holy shit, we've got a fucking
fair enough.
Seriously.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we've already talked about it, but no, it's definitely worthy in this particular episode being the send-off song of AAF. I have to pick Black Sabbath off of the Black Sabbath album that came out in 1970, just because of what it means and where we all were and that whole experience. And if it's a song that people haven't revisited in a while, it's certainly the birth of heavy metal, some would say. So definitely revisit that as part of this recommendation. So that's my pick for this week.
Can I go second?
Absolutely.
Do it.
Alrighty. So before I go into my Song of the Week pick, just a reminder that we have a Song of the Week playlist on Spotify where we put all of our Song of the Week picks in their entirety. If you have not checked it out, it's kind of eclectic, as we've mentioned on some previous shows, because we've had topics that have been all over the place over the last few months. But we put the link to that in the description of every show, so you can go check that out. With that, I was not going to pick Black Sabbath by Black Sabbath because I felt like that was the obvious choice and that somebody was going to pick that. So I went with a song that I felt was equally as relevant for this episode, and that song is Rush's Spirit of the Radio off the 1980 album Permanent Waves. This album also featured Free Will and Jacob's Ladder. And for me, I can't hear any Rush song without thinking of AAF and Mike Shue, because if you listen to AAF, you know what a big fan of Rush Mike Shue is.
Greatest band in North America, he said.
That's right. I will always have fond memories. Well, I don't know, maybe fond's not the word to use here, but the thing that really stood out for me was when the news broke of Neil Peart's passing, and Mike Shue dedicated his entire show to a tribute to Neil. And I think you'd be hard pressed to find another station anywhere where anybody did a tribute quite like that. I'm sure there were other rock stations that played some Rush songs and talked about his passing, but Mike Shue did interview clips of Neil Peart. He took calls from listeners. He played Rush songs. This was his 4-hour long show. And, you know, I just thought it was a really heartfelt tribute. And it was hard for me at times to listen to it because you could tell that Shue was having a hard time because this band means so much to him, and it was just a hard moment. And it's things like that that I think I really miss a lot about AAF. And so, you know, this song in particular was inspired by Toronto radio station CFNY's slogan. The band recently released an animated video that featured animations of the various DJs and major players at the stations from over the years. And at the end, they had a really nice tribute to Neil. And for me, in my mind, when I see this video, what I envision is animated video with Mistress Carrie, Mike Shue, Greg Hill, Ozone, Rocco and Birdsey, all of the big name DJs that were at AAF over the years during my time of listening, and who to me embodied the spirit of the radio here in Boston. And unfortunately, my animation skills aren't good enough to pull off like my rendition of that, but just in my mind know that that's what I'm kind of seeing there. But it's a really great track. It was named one of Rock and Roll Hall of Fame's 500 songs that shaped rock and roll. If you've heard it, you understand why. If you haven't heard it, you have to have been living under a rock or something. Go check out the playlist. We'll have it in there. It's a fantastic song. But for me, I felt like there was no other choice for me for this episode. So Rush's Spirit of the Radio is my pick of the week for this week.
Mike Shue, that's one of the finest days of radio he has ever done.
Yeah.
A quick story about that day. So I had gotten off the air and was in my office, and the news broke. Now, he's down the hall in the on-air studio with TVs and internet, Twitter, like all of it. So I ran down to the studio thinking that he would have known already. So I ran into the studio, ran behind the board, and I just grabbed him and hugged him. And he had no idea what was going on. He hadn't heard yet. And he was like, "Why are you hugging me?" And I had not intended on, like, I didn't want to be the one to tell him. I was running in there to be the one to console him. And when I got in there and was hugging him and realized I was now the person that was going to tell him, I was like, oh my God. And so I just said it, you know, there's no way to like not say it. So I just said it, and the hug got 3 times as tight. And he was just, I could feel his sadness, you know, and I just held him. And at that point, Joe, our program director, ran down the studio, and we were just standing there, and Josh Dolan, who was working with Mike on the air at the time, Mike just looked at me and Joe and was like, "What do you want me to do?" And Joe just said, "Whatever you want. The show is yours. You do what you want." And then Mike just started barking orders at Josh and was like, "I need you to find this record and this interview clip." And even though he was so sad from this artist that he loved so much, I watched him become the consummate professional and understand that he only got one shot. Just like we only got one shot to say goodbye to AAF, he only had one shot to memorialize one of his heroes, and he rose to the occasion. I mean, nobody could have done it better than him.
He did a phenomenal job with that show.
Yeah,
sure.
He made us all proud that day.
Absolutely.
So next, I mean, Matt, do you want to take the floor, or Carrie, do you have a song? Do you need another minute? All right.
I got a song. I know what I'm doing. I'm
all right.
professional.
Well, you know, these songs that we're mentioning they're all AAF related. Mine's not AAF related, but it's more directed with Carrie related. And I came across in part of our conversation, we're talking about, the struggle of trying to find new music. And I actually stumbled across these guys accidentally on just a regular random search off of a regular random, a playlist. And the band I'm going to be talking about is, I think they're badass, just like Carrie is. So this band is called Bone Steel, and they have a song called Within These Walls. It's actually a single. It came out a couple of years ago, 2019. Listening to the song, it just power drives right into heavy distorted guitars, almost like you want to put your fist through a concrete wall. And what's great about it is that it's got like a very grungy type, like early 2000s vibe. But what I found very, very appealing to this tune is that it's also very melodic, almost kind of a little similar to Corey Taylor. So I know, Carrie, you're personal friends with Corey Taylor and whatnot. So
such a great human.
I'm sorry, what?
He's such a great human.
I've heard nothing but great things about Corey Taylor and whatnot. And when I think of this band Bone Steel, it's got like Corey Taylor elements with early 2000s, and this is something that I just is that
I have the sign. I met him and got his book signed.
Oh, awesome.
Oh yeah,
it's amazing. And for those that for those that can't look at the video, Ted's got Corey Taylor's
one of his many books.
Yeah, no,
one
he
of his
wrote
many
so
books
many
that's
books.
personally signed. Whatnot. But it's one of those songs that just it's so badass. I think it's great. It's got a melodic tune to it. It's very catchy. And so the band's by Bone Steel, the song's called Within These Walls. And like I said, when I think of it, I was excited about today's episode because, again, like I said, Carrie's badass and this is a badass song. So I thought it was only appealing to go ahead and reference that for my song of the week. But
nice. With
that being said, our special guest, Carrie,
what do we have? What's your choice?
So I knew that someone was going to pick Black Sabbath, right?
Yeah, I know.
So much time talking, and I'm glad you did, because you spend so much time talking about that last day, right? That like you want that song is so much a part of it. And one of the reasons why we chose it was that, Black Sabbath basically is credited with starting heavy metal. Like that's the first heavy metal album. And it came out like 6 weeks before AAF signed on the air as a rock station in 1970. And shortly before AAF went off the air, Ozzy released his new album, Ordinary Man. And so hoping that one of you guys would have picked the Sabbath tune, I chose the title track from Ordinary Man, which is the song that Ozzy does with Elton John. And it was one of the last new songs that we added on AAF before we went off the air. And part of the reason why I picked it is when you listen to the song, it's an acknowledgement of the life that Ozzy has led, right? It's an acknowledgement of his life's failures and an acknowledgement of his successes and triumphs. And he did it and collaborated with an artist that he holds in such high regard, and vice versa. Elton John and Ozzy, even though they don't seem like they would be people that would like hang out or whatever, they have very similar, upbringings that they, are both British and kind of went through that whole 70s era and hit these levels of fame at such young ages and really did start genres in a way, that they became bigger than life in their respective forms of music. And if you watch the video and you listen to the lyrics of the song, Ozzy is at a place in his life, much like Johnny Cash is, if you watch the video of the 9 Inch Nails cover.
Oh, you hurt? Yep.
Yeah. Like you watch that video and you listen to that song, he's very well aware and very reflective on the life that he's led. And he's very well aware of where he is in the world. And I feel like, in a way, that Ordinary Man song, I mean, it's why he named the album that. And I feel like it ties the knot, right? From your song to my song, of the beginning and the end, not of Ozzy, obviously, because he's still with us, thank God, but like the beginning and the end of WAAF. And also there's a certain amount of it that's kind of in the lyrics reflective of me, you know, and the acknowledgement of the life that I've led and the things that I've done and the failures that I've had, and celebrating the good things as well. And kind of figuring out like where I want to go next. And I think, you know, by no means is it Ozzy's eulogy the way that, you know, David Bowie was able to with Black Star, like literally write his own obituary in a record, knowing that the end was near. But Ozzy, I think, has had a lot of time over the last few years to take stock in himself with the illnesses and the accidents, and to really look himself and give himself a hard look in the mirror and to overcome insurmountable odds. And while mine have not been physical, I think there's a lot of that same kind of mentality of having to take stock in my life and figure out what it is that I am going to do with the rest of it. And how I feel about forgiving myself for my mistakes and celebrating and allowing myself to celebrate the victories, you know? And so,
right.
I couldn't have picked my song if you hadn't have picked yours, Ted.
All
so
right, perfect.
I knew one of you guys would have, and I was like, okay, this is going to be perfect. But that's why I picked it, is that I think, you know, for as much meaning as we read into the Black Sabbath ending of AAF, I think, you know, there's a lot of similar symbolism in Ordinary Man from Ozzy too. So that's my pick.
Awesome.
That's amazing. Awesome. And I love the story behind it, you know, and that's what, you know, a part of the show is about, is, you know, the show, our Distorted Opinions is about, you know, just anything related with music. And what's great is that we spent a good quarter of our topic tonight talking about how music can impact someone. Okay, whether it's on a personal level or, you know, on a third party level. It's great to hear these stories behind, you know, how music can impact. And you know, Carrie, that's great to hear, you know, the story behind your pick and whatnot.
It's a good song. I mean, I think a lot of metalheads gave him crap for doing the song with Elton John, you know what I mean? But when you go and you really look at what the song means to Ozzy as the creator, he's the one with the opinion that means the most. I think he's at a point in his life now where he's very self-aware that he's got more years behind him than he has in front of him.
Right. Almost like at peace. Yeah.
Well,
just like what you were mentioning.
He's making amends, I think. And he's been put through the ringer, I think, more than almost anybody I can think of, you know, some of it's self-imposed, some not. Yep. And so I just love the idea that even at his age, even with everything that he's been through, that he is in a place where he is grateful and that he's not riddled with regret and anger, and that he's optimistic. And I think, you know, there's a lot to be said for that, and that he still loves what he does so much that he's doing it for the love of it and not because he's hoping, you know, well, I got to sell 1 million copies, or I got
well, at this point, hopefully his catalog is paying for itself.
Well, yeah,
anyway,
but like Ozzy doesn't have to write records anymore.
No, I know.
You know what I mean? Like Ozzy can just sit back and collect checks if he wanted to, but he's still making music because it's what he does. It's who he is. It's his passion. And that's to be respected and commended. And, you know, we should all be so lucky to be able to find what it is that makes us tick in our soul, and to continue to do it, even if it's not for anyone else's joy but our own. Mm-hmm. You know, there's a lesson.
100% agree.
So
100% agree.
Long live Ozzy, who will probably outlive. It's Ozzy, Keith Richards, and Cher are like
Betty
3
White.
of the 4.
I'm knocking on wood now.
Oh man!
Just celebrate Ozzy, man. Just celebrate Ozzy.
That's right. All righty. Well, I think with that, we've reached the end of the show. Carrie, I want to thank you again. It has truly been a pleasure and an honor having you on the show. And
the pleasure was mine. Thank you so much.
Oh, anytime. And as a reminder to our audience, check out the Mistress Carrie podcast on your favorite podcast platform. Don't forget to drop into Cocktails in the War Room every Tuesday at 8:30 p.m. on Carrie's Facebook page. Also, check out mistresscarrie.com for all the latest updates, and you can get merch there as well. If you missed a show, you can find them on there. We'll put the links to all of those different things into the description of the show, so be sure to... That's right, all the things. On a Distorted Opinions note, if you've got a music-related topic that you'd like us to talk about, or maybe you'd like to be a guest on the show, reach out to us. There's a few ways you can do that. You can then head over to our Anchor page and leave us a voice message at anchor.fm/distortedopinions. While you're there, you can find links to all of our social media accounts, as well as a partial list of the platforms that the show is available in audio-only format. It's only a partial list. If you don't see your favorite platform listed there, just search for Distorted Opinions. There's a good chance that we're on there and it's just not on our Anchor page. The other way you can reach out to us is by email, and our email address is distortedopinionshow@gmail.com. And we also respond if you comment on any of our social media posts. We're pretty responsive no matter where you reach out to us. So with that, again, thank you, Carrie. Thank you to our audience.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Carrie, for coming on the show.
It was a lot of fun, and we look forward to bringing you a new episode next week. Well, we hope you'll join us then. Thanks for tuning in, guys.
Thank you.